Moving on, creates a perfect lead really for our next discussion, which is with Nigel Cottle from Crave Cafe and KIND Cafe, and Age Palmer from Addington Coffee Co-op. So I actually have been greatly inspired by both Nigel and Age and the work that they've done, utilising business as a way to kind of recreate communities or help the revitalisation and rejuvenation of communities. So welcome, Nigel. Welcome, Age.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Age, you there?
I am. Can you hear me? This is as smooth as it gets for technology, so I'm stoked to be in the room.
Cheers. All right, we thought we'd just do a quick little intro in terms of who we are, and then just maybe punch into our origin stories, and you guys just ask questions and see how we go. So my name's Nigel. I'm based in the neighbourhood of Morningside. I've been here for 15 years. We're just sort of setting up around how we make the neighbourhood a better place to live. That's the idea. And so as part of that process, there's been a number of kind of different social / impact enterprises that have been set up, really focus on the hyper local bit. And probably the most well-known one of those will be Crave Cafe. That's gone from sort of small to big in the last little bit.
Yeah, and I'm Age, or Adrian's my actual name, from Orotai, Christchurch, born and bred here. And my day job is running Addington Coffee Coop and everything associated with that. We roast our own coffee there, and we've survived 15 years, is what I like to say, especially down here. And yeah, known Stephen for a long time, and seeing, I guess, all of these people here part of this conference is pretty cool. So I'm a little bit overwhelmed in terms of this is awesome. So stoked to be here and share a bit about our story with you all.
All right, into your origin, Age.
Yeah, cool. So I've done the stupid thing and tried to have some slides as well, and they're just images, okay, no bullet points of anything. So just bear with me for one bit of something. Okay, share screen. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen, and let's see what happens here. Because pictures paint 1,000 words, they say.
Well, just while he's doing that, the other thing of Age is particularly famous for too has been the drummer from Zed, who got a little national tour happening later this year.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm actually doing this in my daughter's bedroom, and she's got her drumsticks down here. So if this slideshow fails, I can pull those out and have we play. Yeah, cool. So can you all see that image now? Yeah, yep. Cool. Nice one. Yeah, so 15 years ago, about, I don't know, 4 or 5 friends of ours, we took a couple of week trip to India and visited Calcutta, and some friends over there that were running an organization called Freeset, which worked in the red light district of Calcutta, creating jobs, alternative jobs from sex work there. And we were just, I guess, overwhelmed by what we saw, a new part of the world I didn't even know existed, in terms of poverty and the impact of poverty, and also inspired by what we saw there, that business and being in the community could make a bit of a difference there. And then we thought, well, that's not right. Something's got to change there. And then we thought, well, look, if we can't be there, why not in New Zealand, Aotearoa New Zealand? And if not just in New Zealand, why not where we live in Christchurch? And if not in Christchurch, why not in the suburb that we live in? And so we all moved into this suburb called Addington in Christchurch, with the mission and vision of living and breathing and being part of that community, and I guess making it a better place to live. And that doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen by throwing money at it. It happens by being there and feeling the pain, feeling the joy of that community, and growing with it. One of the sayings we had when we started was about schooling, and it was like, if the school's not good enough for our kids, it's not good enough for anyone's kids. It's a lovely line to rattle off. It's really hard to live out in practice. But slowly our local school we've got involved with, and it's a hustling and bustling school which is very diverse, so that's part of our community living there as well. Now on top of that, we thought actually a bit of a community place and a bit of a business could be good, a bit of a force for good economically. So we bought a building, remortgaged our houses, and bought this building here, and had no idea what we were going to do. And then we were like, let's do a cafe, because that sounds like a great thing to do for the community. Luckily, none of us had any experience of business, otherwise we wouldn't have done it. And then so we transformed this over 9 months into Addington Coffee Co-op, and started running a cafe. And I do reiterate, we didn't know what we were doing, which I think was a benefit, because I don't think we would have done it if we'd known what it would take. And I think, you know, we've managed to make this work into a really viable business. I caught the last 15 minutes of what you were just talking before, Stephen, around, you know, how do we make this work? And I think we've had very clear mission for this business, has been to make profit. That was the first thing. The second was to redistribute that profit. So I guess you'd call it philanthropic capitalism, but we've been committed to that. We've tried to commit 70% of our profit every year on average to going to charitable causes locally and globally. So I think we're up to about 2.5 million, which, you know, over 15 years isn't heaps per year, but it's still pretty good for a little cafe. And employment was another one. So we wanted to create employment with dignity and purpose. You want a good book on that? The Tyranny of Merit is a good book on why work needs dignity about it anyway. And we also created some jobs for people who are struggling to get work, perhaps out of prison or out of rehab, or some of the refugee community we've come across. And the last value was belonging. We want to create a place of belonging for our staff, our customers, and our belonging in the global world. So I guess we've run our cafe and our coffee roastery with these 4 values just sharply driving every decision, and that we're still run by those values every day. So I guess that's my story in Christchurch, and it looks very nice from the outside, but inside there's lots of gory stories to share later if we get time. But I'll pass it over to Nigel. I think we went over my time, but there you go.
Yeah, it's always let someone go first. Hey, I mean, similar kind of vibe, right? There's a crew of us. We moved into the neighbourhood of Morningside, but actually at the time we thought we moved into Kingsland, because Kingsland was the cool suburb sort of next door to Morningside, and the building that we moved into had been marketed as Kingsland. And it took us about 1.5 years to kind of own the fact that, like, well, no, we live in Morningside, not Kingsland. And then we realised that no one lived in Morningside. It was a neighbourhood that existed in, like, there was a train station, but no one put it at the bottom of the address because it wasn't cool, it wasn't good. So they chucked other neighbourhoods like Kingsland or Sandringham or Western Springs or St. Luke's or Mount Albert. They were all the neighbourhoods that people put down. And so we thought, nah, we live in Morningside, let's own it, and let's try and kind of really re-establish this thing, and you know, make it a better place to live. And a cafe is the obvious space, but like age, none of us had any experience with cafes. So we started a little 20-seater, just a little one, just to try and connect neighbours to neighbours. And it was in the worst location possible, really. You know, location's critical, and we met none of the normal factors that you want. But we were committed to the, you know, just the idea of it. And we just grew year and year. So it was about 14 years ago we kicked off, and where Addington kicked off strong and big, we were tiny, and so we were leaning on them in the first little bit. But we grew, and we were, you know, committed to the neighbourhood and doing street parties and, you know, giving all our profits back into the neighbourhood. And after about 7 years, a local business guy offered us the idea to come across the road to this nice new sunny big old forklift tyre warehouse. And he said, look, you know, I'm a big landowner in the neighbourhood, and I've seen you guys giving back, and I'd like to give back too. So he offered to pay for the fit out of this place. And so we moved into this, what you can see on screen now, the current Crave site, which is just awesome. And like, we were always sort of in the neighbourhood development side of things, not on the hospitality side of things, but what we've kind of journeyed in and become kind of part of the hospitality establishment in some ways. And in the last couple of years, we've won the kind of the hospitality people vote on the best cafe in the city, and they voted us twice in a row. And so we're really stoked on that. It's kind of really validates the hard work we put into the business, not just the hard work we put into the neighbourhood and that kind of thing. Crave was sort of set up, we realized it was around pride for the neighbourhood, around connection. How do we connect people, and about how do we empower? You know, we also employ some people that are maybe difficult to employ, but give them some ways they can self, you know, empower. We then set up, long story, a little cafe next door called KIND, and that was around making the neighbourhood greener and healthier. So it's a mostly plant-based cafe, and my wife runs that, and she's a bang-up job. And there was this kind of whole sense there, and then other sort of things have sort of trickled up in the last couple of years, but just really trying to really push into this idea of Morningside. Over to you, Age.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Nigel. And it's been awesome having these parallel kind of stories over the years, and Nigel and I have connected, and been inspired by each other and learned from each other too, which has been really, really cool. So, and our paths have connected quite a lot in the last 3 or 4 years, and it kind of originates back in that India story. So when we first visited India years ago, I'm also part of managed an organization in New Zealand called Joyya. And this slide here, I just realized I put this, I put the brand here over this photo. That's not Joyya, but this is where Joyya works, and Joyya is, it's not a great brand photo. So this is in Calcutta, India, and this is in one of the neighborhoods that Joyya works alongside. And so Joyya is an organization that I guess works alongside some of these communities, and it has a mantra called Spark Good. And spark good, we say, in places of extreme poverty and modern slavery. And the spark is a really key thing, because it sort of invokes that catalyst meaning rather than do good. And we're very, very aware after all these years that actually catalyzing is the best thing. Localizing that work is the best thing. So why am I talking about this now? Because I think everything that I'm part of, and a lot of what Nigel is part of, points towards this. Joy works in places where opportunities and choice are very limited, and poverty is the leading cause of that. It's the leading cause of human trafficking. It's the leading cause of low education. It's the leading cause of death and illness in these countries. I think what we're doing is trying to be part of that and resource that with the skills that we've got over here in our little neighborhoods. Joy works in 3 main ways. It works as a business called Joyya Goods, which employs people, and it makes t-shirts and apparel. And we sell those to customers. So I think we've just got another order from Ben & Jerry's yesterday in Australia. So they're buying some t-shirts off us. Untouched World here in Christchurch buy t-shirts off us. And then it runs Joyya Collective, which is a social service part of the organization, which has health, education, and legal clinics. Before this call, I made a payment to a lawyer who's heading up our legal clinic over there for legal advice, which is hugely important when you're from a very, very poor community. And then Joyya Neighbours, which is kind of like us moving into the neighborhood. It's actually being part of that neighborhood and experiencing it, not doing it from a distance, which is quite a unique part of what Joyya is about. I don't know how much time I got. There's just a little story on this. There was a girl that the Joyya crew over there met when they kind of first got over there. And her parents had a debt to a loan shark. And I'm not talking about loan sharks that we know about here. There's loan sharks, you're talking gangs and sort of nefarious types. It was a $12 loan. Now, I don't know how many of us have still got student loans or some sort of credit card to pay off. But if you default on that, the consequences are maybe a high interest rate or something. The consequences here were her parents either had to go to jail or sell their daughter, right? And so that's just mind-blowing for us to see how poverty strips that choice away. And you've got no buffer between like, oh yeah, I'm all right, to catastrophe. Like I just took my wife to the doctor, right? And we had to pay $50 or something, right? That's catastrophe if you've got no buffer. And I think that's what Joyya tries to help with in one part as well. So this is the kind of communities we work in. This is where they live. And this is the banks of the Hooghly River in Calcutta. And then also this is where we work. So this is some of our crew over there at Joyya making t-shirts and they make bags. And they're an amazing bunch of people. And what's awesome is that slowly management becoming localized as well in that crew as well. So I guess that's a little 5-minute insight into Joyya, which I guess we'll connect in a bit later when we talk a little bit more about our coffee brand as well. But back to you, Nigel.
Yeah, right. Sweet as. Now, so in the neighborhood, Morningside, we had these cafes, but there was also a sense of like, what else can we do just to kind of, give some pride? And so we were trying to come up with business names that went with Morningside. Me and my mate Tim, we kind of came up with the first thing was like a cycle repair shop called Morning Cycles. And yeah, we were over in Seattle at the time, I think, doing some neighborhood stuff, and rang back our wives like, hey, morning cycles, what do you think? And they're like, it sounds more like a feminine hygiene product. Yeah. And we're, oh, yeah. And once you hear that, you can't unhear it. And so then the thing was like, well, Morningcider just seemed to make sense. And like, we knew nothing about cider, didn't drink it, didn't do anything, but we thought, let's start a company. And so we started up a company, Morningcider, and we tried to make some cider. It was terrible, but we kept pursuing, and we gave it a go. We eventually was like, let's just try and get it to a point we can put it on tap at Crave. And we got it to a good enough point, and then there was a sense of like, oh, people like this, and so maybe we can go wider. We got a local brewery to help us do some bigger stuff, and then we went wider. So now, and so Morningcider now is like distributed right across the country, and about 800 different places, and it's. And last year we got the most awarded cider of any cider. Our normal cider was the Champion Trophy Modern Cider, and it's been like a really cool story for us of like it's just a fun little side project that just kept on, and we've even exported to about 4 or 5 countries. It's still like difficult and tricky, and almost go bankrupt every week, but it's awesome, and it'd been a fun little kind of side bit there, and then that sort of spawned other things that come out of that. We had to kind of open a Philly cheesesteak joint to try and get a place for where the cider taproom is going to be. And we've just launched a new little bar called Side Hustle, which is like the sort of French wine cave thing as a thing for it. And so the idea is that there's a bunch of things happening in the neighborhood through hospitality, through other things that connect people to people, that create pride. Because I went to Lake Tekapo, and there was a can of Morningcider in the Foursquare thing there. And I was like, that's awesome. Our little neighborhood that no one liked is now kind of being exported all over the place and all over the world. And it's fun. And it sort of has highlighted this cool kind of thing of it's not hard to sort of say yes, but it is tricky, and you do have to kind of risk a little bit. About a year ago, we took on Yeasty Boys, a kind of a New Zealand beer brand, and so we brew and distribute that throughout the place as well. And just we've got a big sort of men's mental health campaign starting off next week that sits around for most men, the first bunch of flowers they ever receive is at their own funeral. And in terms of male suicide, how do we kind of just get a low alcohol beer to kind of help men have a chat to each other and really encourage genuine conversation, not just some. So there's a few things that we're doing in the kind of broader bits there that fit on different levels of sort of social enterprisey, impacty stuff that we're kind of pushing into. But now we kind of there's a place where us and Age kind of came together to really connect. Age, over to you.
Yeah. So I think here's a nice green slide. I'll talk about that in a sec. So I think we have connected, and I was talking a little bit before about Joyya, and so everything that I do points towards that. So in our cafe, when you buy coffee in our cafe or some eggs or avocado, trying avocado with kimchi in the summer menu night, you should try it. Anyway, it's good, and the profits from that go towards Joyya, right? So everything we do points towards something good. Keen to talk legal structures later, Stephen, if you want, but that's been a journey too. So we roasted coffee under a brand called Jailbreaker for 10, 12 years, and mainly because there was actually the Addington prison was just down the road, and we're sort of a nod to that, and a nod to kind of like, hey, come out of jail, you want a job, we'll give you a job. It was a little bit that was kind of the ethos behind Jailbreaker, but I think it's sort of the meaning of it probably lost its shine over the years. And so we decided after a while to rebrand into what's now called Common Good Coffee, which is what you see here. And I approached Nigel as well, and Nigel's running some big cafes, and changing coffee brands not easy when you talking a big cafe. But after we worked on the brand, and actually got that looking good, and Nigel and his crew came on board buying it, but also thought, how do we grow this? Like, it's one thing to just sell it through our cafes. And if we want to grow in the North Island, we've got to employ someone, or someone's got to shift up there. So we thought let's find some friends to sell it for us and distribute it for us in the North Island. So we've got Nigel and the crew out of Crave and KIND doing that in Auckland, and out of Wanganui, and Wellington is a crew doing it for us there as well, distributing for us. All around this brand called Common Good Coffee. And we formed this as we took on these distributors. So it's kind of a collective thing, legally sits under the Addington entity. And it's got three, I'll talk about this later if we have time on learnings, but it's got a crystal clear mission, which is divided into three. There's this little cheeky line here called 3 times as good as regular coffee. And it's very confusing for people because what's regular coffee? But it makes you ask the question, and we've got some beautiful grammar down the bottom here. Drink gooder, feel gooder, and do gooder. And so there's 3 things our coffee does, and it's pretty easy to stick to these. And this is what we do. 1, it's got to taste good. And that's a key thing when you're doing business and trying to have impact. You've actually got to make a good product that people want. Now, that might be cheap coffee because there's a market for that. But whatever your market is, you've got to make a product that's fit for purpose for that market. So for us, it's about having coffee that people want to drink, not that they're drinking it out of charity. The second one is feel gooder, and that's about supply chain transparency. So at the moment, we're fair trade certified, and there's a myriad certifications we could choose, or even direct trade as well. But I guess the key thing there is not the certification; it is that growers are important in the supply chain. And then do gooder. So for us, we have committed that $5 a kg of coffee we sell goes towards Joyya to do what they do over there. So $5 is quite a lot when you're talking about coffee, and it makes it hard to make a profit, especially the last couple of years with green bean prices. But that has been, I guess, our mission and what we've been about. And we've just hit, we're over that now, probably approaching 250,000 that we've raised since we launched about 2.5-3 years ago, selling coffee. And that's just through everyone buying and drinking coffee. And we sell, cafes, individuals, a lot of corporates, big offices. We love the corporates. They've got money to spend and they want to spend on something good. If you're in this Zoom and you need better coffee, I'll stay online afterwards. And so this is us, our next kind of venture growing there. And it's actually been an awesome pathway for people to engage in that Joyya global story as well, that we wouldn't get through selling a t-shirt or a bag. And so I've really enjoyed that part of it too, and really enjoyed working nationally with our other team as well. The Parryfield offices are buying at all their offices. So Stephen, thank you so much. Appreciate that. And yeah, we look forward to keeping it going. But I guess the heart of it is the mission for me, and that's why we do this coffee thing. Nigel, yours.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, I took my family over to Kolkata for about 3 months a few years back when my girls were just becoming teenagers, and just to try and kind of give them a greater sense of the world. And we really, it was so profound time, for us there. We found with Crave, when we first kicked off the cafe, it was, on one level, we should have been buying coffee from Age and Jailbreaker down in Addington because they're like our homeboys in terms of, sorting things out. But what we needed was, because we're a community cafe, and most people know community cafes are like pretty actually crap as cafes, but they got a good heartbeat. And so we needed to try and get legitimacy. And so we needed to use a good brand to give ourselves legitimacy. And so we were a Supreme Cafe for a while, and so people could see that Supreme on the outside and go, oh, it's probably going to be good coffee. And then they came in. And then after a while, we got big enough that we didn't need the legitimacy of another brand. We could provide legitimacy to this brand. And so you've ended up with essentially the 2 biggest cafes in the North and South Island kind of giving legitimacy to this brand of common good coffee, and trying to kind of prove a point there. And so I think it speaks to like the nature of the journey of a social enterprise of when when you're getting going and what you need from and then before you can give, and in order for the business to be sustainable and ongoing. Age was saying, like, they could have just kept control of that and kind of had their own enterprise be bigger, but they chose, like, let's give some of that control away, because we know that the overall objective of getting more money into that Joyya kind of context can be achieved if we give control and work collaboratively together. And so it's been a really cool thing. At Crave in our basement, we've just it's been a little kind of, I don't know, a hub for little startups, over the last few years. Some really cool things have come out of there. And so that's where Common Good up north has been coming out of. And that the idea of $5 a kilo before profit is also really interesting, because so like Crave, we give all of our profits away, but some years you make no profit and therefore you don't have money to give away. But with this thing here, it's like, well, before you talk about profit, we've given a whole lot of money away. And it's pretty cool to be part of something, on both ends of those sort of spectrums. And so I'm enjoying the the collaboration of Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch. You know, we work together. We kind of have shared decision making, even though technically Age and the crew down there could just kind of overrule things. They're generous in that process, and we get a lot more out of it. So Paul Fletcher down in Wellington, the crew, you know, who leads the crew down there, are really, you know, doing good stuff. And there's lots of good energy and momentum and sort of ideas, I think, that flow out of that kind of collaborative space. In that regard, yeah.
Cool. Well, how are we doing for time? We've still got 20 minutes or something, is that right? Yeah. So we thought we'd just rattle through a few learnings, each of us. And I don't know if this is a normal thing, but for me, most of my learnings have come through some failure. The most of the learnings that stick, at least. And I think that's not uncommon. So I've sort of got just a handful here, and then I just got some as well, and then we might have some time for some questions as well. So I thought my first one was, and I alluded to this before, was clearly define your mission and what success looks like. And from this, then create some filters that you can make decisions through. And then you're serving your mission and you're avoiding that mission creep coming in. And I think it's really important, probably even more so important in the impact kind of sector, to have that clear, because there are so many good things you could or should be doing. You can't do them all. You'll collapse. And that's hard, you know, like we've got a lot of work to do on climate stuff in our coffee brand, right? We ship stuff around the world, like it's tricky right now. But I think we're still pretty focused on what we do. So I think that's really an important thing to just, you know, you can change your mission, but don't do it by stealth, I think it would be a key thing. And there's been times when I've done that and I've done this or that, and I've come back to like, what am I doing this for? And I've diluted our focus. Another one, it's not particularly exciting, but it's know your numbers. Like business, for profit, not for profit, whatever it is, it involves money. And if you don't know your numbers, find someone that does. I feel like everyone says that. It's so true. Don't avoid making decisions based on your numbers, because it's really important. And I've made mistakes on that where I've ignored numbers and then like, oh, gee, that wasn't a good time. And so now I get those numbers really regular. So we're looking at that kind of thing. And I'm not a numbers guru, but I do like knowing the numbers. So I've put a team around that can do that well. A couple more things would be hire and fire well. Now that's a pretty blunt way of saying things, but I thought getting the right people is everything. Getting them on board, looking after them, and it's not just about the money. It's about giving them space to live and breathe your purpose and their strengths. And then if you stuff it up with the people, fix it. And I haven't done that sometimes, and it's been to a detriment. It's hard to do. I'm a naturally conflict averse person, and as I've got older, I've learned to work through that, and make decisions that are really good for the organization, not just for how I'm feeling. And I guess by implication on my little thing here would be you're going to need other people. Now, I just did, yes, solo artists do exist. Ed Sheeran's huge, I know, so Swifty, but you know, there's something around, there's a team behind every solo artist, and I think doing it with others is super important. And I think it's part of the joy. I think I was saying to someone the other day, I said, I actually don't care what I do in life. If I'm doing it with people I really enjoy doing it with, and there's purpose, I'm happy. And I think that's genuinely true for me, actually. Yeah. So others are important. Delegate, support, and spread the work as much as you can, because you're going to get that diverse contribution from different people as well. Someone said an interesting thing the other day. I'm sure it's a management thing, but it was like you want people that you'll fight and unite, and I think that's a good thing as well. You don't want a whole lot of yes people. You want people that are going to push you and challenge you and sharpen you as well. Another one's volunteerism. Now, Nigel, we had a little bit of a different take on this, but I think I've got a twist which still makes sense for what he's going to probably say. Hey, Nigel. I guess, you know, it's a thing that I think the thing is volunteerism is not sustainable in the long term if you're going to run a whole organization on it. Now, I know on this call, I've seen someone I know that's volunteered to do a pretty significant part of the work of Joyya over the last 4 or 5 years, and they're able to do that, right? My thing is that people do want to contribute to a better world, and they don't necessarily want it to be transactional. But I think, so while you've got to make space for volunteerism, you've got to factor in what that cost would be so that you're not relying on it as well, because otherwise when that generation of initial people that might be interested or whatever goes, then you're kind of left with this unsustainable model. So that's what I think about those kind of, you know, ways to approach volunteerism as well. Plenty more learnings, but there's a starter anyway.
Good as. So some learnings for me, you know, I think at the core, or at least the business has to be a priority, not just a purpose. You know, so particularly, you know, I've been a part of lots of fundraising and charitable things where people have this idea, we'll do this bit, you know, and it'll make money for this thing that we want to do. And the business is really just only a vehicle for money. But two things: the business itself should do good and should in some way try and help contribute, you know, to the purpose. And B, it needs to be sustainable, not just ecologically sustainable, but just as a you know, financially sustainable. And you can't do that if you just don't care about it. I think it's what, you know, Age is saying too in terms of numbers. So what I've found is, like, say, if we run a cafe, the food has to be really good and the coffee has to be awesome, and the service needs to be on point. And we can't just rely on people going, oh, look, they've got, like, you know, a terrible barista, but they're a lovely person, and so we'll just, you know, give them a pass. Like, people will only come to your cafe, your business, you know, once or twice because they like your social purpose if your actual product is not very good. So but I often find people, they see the business or the product or service as the means to an end, but it just needs to be a priority and an ongoing priority. Otherwise, the business won't be sustainable. And if you don't have a sustainable business, then you can't employ anyone. You know, those are all the things that go down the path in that. Another bit for me is, like, a small group of committed people can have a profound effect on something. Like for us, Morningside, a small group of people have had a profound effect on Morningside. So when we moved in, you know, it didn't seem to exist. And then now, if you look on the Herald in terms of property, Morningside's a suburb that's listed there as a thing, and people own that place, you know, and we have conversations with people who have moved neighborhoods without actually moving their house. And it's part of us, just a few of us put a stake in the ground and said, nah, let's go Morningside hard. And that's a cool place. And we'll kind of build it from this sort of a culture, an opt-in culture thing. Other thing, again, in what Age is saying, man, I'm part of lots of things, but none of it's solo, none of it's me. It's all teams and mates, because everything's better with your mates, you know. And so I find that it just seems to go and be more sustainable, and I try and hook in and work with people in different sort of rooms, you know. And it's like, it's cool now doing this common good stuff with Age and Paul and that, you know, because we're mates anyway, and so it's just better, you know, all around. And there's a loneliness that happens when you're kind of at the top and you're carrying the vision, the mission, you know, and other people can be supportive, but if it's just on you, it's just really hard. And in the hard times, it's easy to kind of maybe just, you know, flag it and give it a go. I think also the other bit is what I was saying about the business as a priority. It's always difficult to navigate that business and mission tension, you know. So, and I think that's never going to go away, and you can never find a sweet spot in it. You just manage the tension and do that. And I think even what Stephen was saying in the previous session around, you know, having these greater purposes and maybe ESG, whenever time you kind of introduce different priorities that sometimes are competing, there's a tension there, and it's just embrace the tension, I think, and that's maybe part of the leadership skill. Other thing I found is it's really fun to engage with the local council if you're not just asking them for money. So we go, hey, council, you trying to make our neighbourhood better, and we're trying to make the neighbourhood better. How about, you know, you help us with some red tape, but we're not going to ask you to fund our project. We'll fund it, but let's just work together on that. And it's a much cooler kind of space when you're not reliant on them for the money, but you want to work together to make the neighbourhood and the city better. And that's been, I think, a real fun thing. Age was talking about the volunteerism. We had a thing of, like, it's illegal to volunteer at Crave. Part of the thing was we wanted the business to be sustainable, and we know you get volunteer fatigue. So we said, if there's a job that needs happening, so we need a barista for this day, we need a chef for that day, we need then you know, we have to pay someone for that. But people could maybe volunteer, and like sometimes we had people, you know, from the drug corp system or things like that needed to do some community service, and so they could come in and volunteer into things that weren't essential to the running of the business, But what we said was, if the business is going to be sustainable and survive, it needs to be able to pay its way. And so that's been our and we're 14 years into that, and it's hard to do a hospo business for a long time. And I think part of it is that we haven't got through that volunteer fatigue stage because we just haven't kind of embraced it as a process. But I think in terms of a project and building something and just getting something off the ground, yeah, absolutely, everyone's got to chip in for stuff like that. Yeah, they're probably my learnings over the last few years of different bits and pieces. We've kind of tried to navigate some tensions, like before, we're sitting in the alcohol space, and there's like a tension that sits with that in terms of a do-good business, also involved with alcohol, and we just try and live in those spaces, be aware of it, and try and still just be and do good within those things.
Yeah, age. Yeah. I mean, there's tip of the iceberg there for both of us, I'm sure. So I think, yeah, if there's any how you want to roll from here, Stephen or who's our host here? We've got, sorry, there we go, Pete.
Completely up to you guys. But I thought I'd put a little wee thing in there into the chat. But if anybody's got any burning questions coming forward, then would really love to hear some.
Yeah. I've been engaging with Stephen over the last few years just on different kind of social enterprise ownership bits in particular, because often people in the charitable space, it's either a company or it's charitable, and I think it's good if there's a little bit of skin in the game. So some of it, like Crave is 100% charitable, but some other things are like 75%, some things are 80%, some things are 30% in terms of how much they give away. And there's some scope for people who work really hard in that business to have some skin in the game and make some profit out of it, whilst it's still doing this awesome mission and things over there. And so like none of the things have got the same ownership structure. It's in some ways just been an experiment, and I think it's been good. And so and I would encourage to kind of see maybe just slightly broader than it's this or that, but what, because I think you can get a little bit more social impact if there's broader motivations.
No, that's really it's really good, Nigel. I think I completely and utterly agree. We've got a question here from Lucy O'Neill. Where do you see your businesses going in the next five years? Any new projects or initiatives that you're thinking about that you might be keen to share?
But for me, one of the things, we're going to sell Morningcider. That's the idea. Like I don't want to become an alcohol baron, but we do want to get it awesome and see it go better. But I'm getting into the affordable housing space, is probably my specific bit. So in the neighborhood that we're in, there's lots of terrible buildings. It's a badly designed neighborhood, if that makes sense, in terms of for walkability, for livability. What we found was that people slept in beds in our neighborhood, but they lived in other neighborhoods, and we'd like to make the neighborhood a bit more livable. And part of that is housing. And also I run a cafe, and we've got cafe staff, and that's hospitality, and a bank's not going to pick up the phone to anyone in our cafe around a mortgage and stuff like that. So I'm like, how do I help things be more affordable? And my process in that is, I think the innovation that I can maybe help in is maybe in the financing side of things, not the actual building of it. So yeah, I'm really getting stuck into how I can help in a broad way make larger projects more livable, and we can finance people into owning at least part of that place they live in.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Nigel. I mean, for me, it'll be growing what we've got. Certainly on the coffee side, we're just scratching the surface at the moment. There's various ways to do that as well, but that's certainly a thing because the impacts can be huge there. And then wearing my other Joyya hats, once again, we're scratching the surface there of what we're engaging with. And when you travel to some of these places, you realize that you really are engaging with a few communities out of thousands and thousands. So I think there's heaps of scope to grow there. Probably localizing that over in India is a massive thing as well, whether that's 5 or 10 years, I don't know, but that's going there. So, and probably just keeping everything else running well here, so that it's feeding into that. But yeah,
I'm wondering if I can dive into something a little wee bit more on the sort of like personal sort of like side of things. And I think the entrepreneurship roller coaster is really known to be quite tough, right? And can really have quite a severe impacts. And with being purpose driven, I don't know whether that accelerates / enhances that roller coaster ride, or alleviates it with the kind of benefit of knowing that there's some good. But how have you sort of like juggled some of those struggles? How deep have they been? Do you feel like it's a bigger thing when you are purpose driven in comparison to a standard business, and any recommendations for anyone out there on navigating that side of things?
I don't think it's any bigger or easier or harder. I think leading's really hard. Paving new ground's really hard. Managing, looking after your teams is really taxing. And it's also really rewarding. And so, I think the last few years have been really, really hard. And I think I personally crashed at the start of this year after those COVID years. I think just leading everyone through and keep surviving, I suppose, and pivoting. I hate that word now. But yeah, so I think it's just as hard, and I think, but probably just as rewarding. I don't know. Like most people that are leading businesses, wherever they are on the impact spectrum, have a purpose. Whether that's purely just they want to get rich or they want to be the latest and greatest product. I think, and that purpose does get you up in the morning, right? So I think that's where the reward is, and the hard stuff is all the things that you'd imagine. Way to deal with that: be vulnerable with a safe crew, I think, and yeah, don't be afraid of talking about what's going on for you, and getting help when you need it. A counselor I knew once said, stop comparing your insides to other people's outsides. And I've always remembered that. We can come on these sort of things, I think, oh wow, Asian Nigel got it all together or whatever, but we've got the same struggles you've got. We've also got the same passion and drive you've got, and I think seeing the humanity in others is helpful for your own journey. That's been me anyway.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, Age. Part of my bit is it's that trying not to go alone in that. And so being connected with people, having a sense of there's a group of us that are doing this. And so I'm not just having to try and generate, because it's not that the ideas that are hard, it's that it's leading those ideas and generating stuff from nothing, and creating momentum that didn't exist before. And if there's a few of you, it's just so much easier and more fun. And I genuinely think that making the world better has to be more fun. There's a guy at Joyya India, and he was talking about, man, it's just so hard because I was wrestling around. If you're in a really poor environment, like it seems bad to have fun, to be able to laugh or enjoy, because there's so much suffering and pain. And the thing is, like, some parts of the world are so difficult that if you can't have fun, it's no point. So you've just got to be able to try and navigate the tension of like having fun whilst achieving something significant in the world. I think is like the best way to go about it.
I second that.
Really cool. I can see Stephen's brought up a thing asking if anybody's got any other examples of community initiatives that got catalysed at cafes. He's mentioned the Ministry of Awesome trustee being signed at the Addington Coffee Co-op, and I kind of actually think it speaks to this role that cafes play in our community of really being a bit of a social hub of bringing people together, right? Like how powerful that can be.
No, massively, and we've got a little kind of shared workspace upstairs at Crave that it's a freebie, but so many good projects have come out of, not that anyone planned it, but they're just up there working alongside each other, and they connected, and this thing, and this film or this book or this website. There's so many things have just come out of the kind of interplay of when you're just working alongside, and there's maybe a little shared or common thing that plays out well. We have a community table at the front of the cafe too that just people have connected really deeply and significantly, in that space. And so there's now like maybe 15, 20 peeps that would just be there every single day. They Christmas together, all that kind of stuff, but none of them knew each other before that table. And the table has kind of just really brought about a whole lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, that's great. We've got this crew that comes down. There's a boxing gym down the road, and they come in every day for a cold brew after their boxing. I don't know what they talk about, but I'm sure it's, sure it's good stuff. But yeah, I think that there are those bump spaces, and that was part of the reason for cafe as well. There's bump space, but be interesting to know what's been achieved in meetings in our cafes. Yeah,
absolutely. So we're drawing up to a close. Feel free, Nigel, Age, if there's any other last little wee bits of wisdom you want to leave with us with, feel feel free. Personally, for me, it's been greatly inspiring. Wearing an ex-community development hat, I'm really sort of enamored around this whole sort of concept of how we can actually utilize businesses to bring communities closer together, but to also really make an impact in the world. So just like to tautoko you both for the work that you've done alongside others in that area. Also shout outs to Camia Young with XCH in Christchurch as well, and some of the great work I've done in this area. So we're about to take a afternoon tea break before heading into the last session. Hope you've been enjoying the Seeds Impact Conference so far. We've got James Lachlan coming in after the break, who is an incredible high performance leadership coach, as mentors coach for the Crusaders, and so please feel free to come and join that conversation. Otherwise, enjoy the break.
Cool. Thank you. Cheers.